So a while back, I was reading 1 Samuel, and it's talking about Samuel learning to hear from God. And Eli, who's the head priest at the time, was helping Samuel recognize the voice of God in his life. And the interesting thing is that Samuel goes away and then does hear from God. And God says some pretty harsh things about Eli and his family. And he talks about how they're blaspheming his name and how basically he's going to cut them off and replace them with Samuel. And then Samuel goes back to Eli, and Eli says, "Tell me everything God said. Don't leave anything out." And so Samuel has to deliver this bad news about what God is going to do to him. And Eli's response, you have to admire. He says, "Okay, let God do what is good in his eyes. He is the Lord." And that's pretty powerful. We often think, it seems that reality, the way things are, is not part of God's plan, and we tend to complain about it or get grumpy about it. There's this phrase in our house that says, "You can be right or you can be happy." And I think that's so true because, for example, we have this wonderful dishwasher, and I've written about this before. Our great dishwasher that I just love, and the only problem is that it is a little bit finicky to load. And so, it's not like our old dishwasher where you could basically throw anything in wherever you wanted to. It's got kind of slots that work for some things and not for others. And so what happens, though, is I go away, I come back, and someone's throwing a few things in there, and they're not in the right place, right? You can be right or you can be happy. And I end up, because I'm being right, being unhappy. And this is obviously a simple example, but I think maybe one that, some of you could relate to. Because when we focus on doing things right or being right, we end up often being unhappy because reality doesn't line up with our wishes, with our kind of conception of what's right, what our beliefs about what's right are. And yet we ignore in that the truth that God's plan is working out. Like God's plan has brought history to this moment. This is reality. There's no other options here. There's not a different reality where everything's working out perfectly. This is the way that God has led history to this moment. And so we should take Eli's thoughts into consideration here. Let him do what is good in his eyes. He is the Lord. And when we change our focus from being right to being happy, I think that's just a useful way of thinking about how things are. If I'm feeling frustrated with how things are, then probably I could take that as a signal to lean into God, to listen to God, to bring that to God and say, "God, in what way am I trying to change things or control things that are not really in line with your plan? Like, obviously, this is the way things are. You've led us up to this moment. Maybe things can change in the future, but for now, I'm getting all upset about this, and I really don't need to because you have a plan, and you are leading me in it." And so that, I think, is a more trustful mode of living. So you can be right or you can be happy. Thanks.